Okay, now because today we have a little bit of time, we are going to look at government policy and coronavirus. As everyone can remember that this thing began in January. That's when there was a lot of reports that people were dying in China. And you can see in this video that at the beginning of March, there wasn't many cases in Africa. They want us to change the range to January so that we can actually see a better picture of what has been happening in the last 6 months. In January, you can see that apart from China, there wasn't much of corona. But then China had more than 50,000 cases by January because everything was going pretty bad in one. Now let's see how we have reacted to this. When China had many cases, the stringency level was quite high. You can see that it's if you click this figure, you can see that the score was 81. Like the government was trying to minimize the impact of the virus in the country. It was trying to make sure that it doesn't spread outside the country. But now, over time, we can see that different governments came in. We can actually trace it to sometimes in March when things became a little bit bad. Then now you can actually see that on 10th of March there wasn't any coronavirus in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Uganda, in Nigeria, or Ghana. What happened that the cases started streaming in somewhere in March? You can see that the first case in Kenya was like in 14th, and you can see the where we began. There is Nigeria. It has very low stringency measures, even when the coronavirus was reported. But immediately the Kenyan government heard that there was corona, they kind of put things into a block. So that's why you can see on 16th of March, just 2 days after the first coronavirus was reported in Kenya, we can see that the stringency score is like 56.48. Now, the University of Oxford data project on the coronavirus has been calculating this score on various measures like whether schools were closed, whether workplaces were closed, public events, restrictions on travel, restrictions on gathering, public transport, stay at home, international travel, income support, debt, physical measures. So part of the Kenyan problem is that even if the government has been putting measures, like putting very stringent measures on coronavirus and the movement of people and social gathering and social distancing, there is also very little support on the people. So you can actually see why our score keeps on increasing because the government is putting restrictions and yet it is not doing anything. There's a point that there's a point where Uganda had more restrictions than Kenya. You can see, but then Kenya went. We introduced the lockdowns. Uganda did not, and then it has been like a mixed kind of thing because at this point in 7th of April, Uganda was more stringent than Kenya. You can see at the top, but then sometimes in May, Kenya government introduced new measures that really put the country at the top of strictness in the region. And we don't know really why our government did that because we can actually see that despite the fact that we have more strict measures, our cases are still more. So you can actually see that there's actually an inverted correlation between the number of cases and the level of strictness that the government is imposing on the people. So I think when we are going to think about whether to open the borders, we need to think whether the strict measures that we have held in the last few months have been effective. Of course, we cannot really assume anything about this coronavirus because you can see Belarus down here, this country, they have not reacted in any way to coronavirus. Then you can see how many cases they have. We can actually see, put this number into perspective. If you look at the Belarus population, you can see that Belarus is a country of around 9.8 million people, and yet it has almost 50,000 cases. Because they opened the fields, the Belarus Premier League has been ongoing even through the Corona period. So you can actually come and say that to a large extent, the the lockdown, the social distances, the measures that are being used to restrict, to limit the people movement and everything, they are functional, they're actually effective to a large extent. But then we can also say we are not quite sure because we have some countries like Tanzania, for example, that has very low restriction score even at mid-May when things were really getting out of hand. Then you can actually wonder why do they have such a low score and yet they have very few cases. That's the same case for Ghana. Ghana has less score, less, but then they have more cases than Kenya. Nigeria has more cases than Kenya, and South Africa is kind of really the country with the most cases in Africa. Now, at the bottom here, you can see Burundi. What can we think about Burundi? We can say maybe Burundi and Tanzania have similarities that they are not reporting their cases, and that's why, despite the fact that they have very low scores, they also have very few number of cases reported. So we can say we cannot rely on the numbers coming from these countries because we pretty well know that having such a relaxed approach to the virus can really mess up populations. But then again, this visualization doesn't really tell a consistent story because you can see a country like Peru, it has very high stringency level that is 96.3 among the highest in the world. Yet it also have the most number of cases. Like it is one of those countries that have really been devastated by the pandemic. So we don't know what we can think about the Peru case, especially given that they show having strict measures is not necessarily a sure way to limit. But then again, we can also explain this situation in Peru in a number of ways. For example, we can say that Peru was reactive, but then we need to demonstrate in the graph. If we want to say that Peru was reactive, actually no, Peru was not reactive. Where is Peru? At the beginning of March, the stringency measure was very low, but for the last 2 or so months, you can actually see that Peru has been having a very high prevalence of coronavirus. Yet Peru is still recording a very high number of cases to among the countries that have a very high prevalence. So we can actually see that it is a little bit confusing to link to link to link stringency to the management of the coronavirus. And that's something that we really need to have a conversation around. Now, that's a first thing we need to think. In June, maybe the government should come and think maybe these stringent measures are hurting the economy more than they should. And that means that we should reconsider our approaches, maybe open up the borders, maybe recommend that people view coronavirus as a personal responsibility where they are required to take care of themselves, ensure social distancing, wear masks, sanitize, things like those. I think that can really go a long way into helping us handle the situation. Now with with that, we'll go to another video. We are going to look at the insights, the heat map for coronavirus. And I think these are very important visualization when you look at it from the perspective of the solutions we are looking at. So and the policies that governments have been having. So we're going to start from January 2020 to June. Just give it a minute. Yeah, you can drag this and you can start to see. You see, this is China. It's China on 23rd of January. Yeah, let's go back. You can see at the beginning of March, coronavirus was like a China thing. If you look at the top here, you can see that the when it started becoming reddish, pinkish, that's like a crisis level, and it shows that the government has kind of done something to cut to limit the spread of the virus. So at the beginning of March, apart from Nigeria, there wasn't another country in Africa that had reacted to the coronavirus. Nigeria was the first place where they started to do a few things, maybe, yeah. And as I said earlier, that the cases started coming in mid-March. Mid-March, you can see it's coming, Yeah, 14th of March. That's when Kenya starts to introduce measures to handle the pandemic. Still, China is in a crisis. You can actually see that Canada is fine. The US started to put some restrictions. That was the same case with Russia. Australia was kind of not interested. So we move a little bit towards the end of March. Things will start to become very elephant for many countries around the world. Then you can see that the US and Canada, they have really come up strongly to put restrictions. And then you can see their stringency levels are actually past the 70% mark. And then the 70% mark means that a lot of activity was cut down for countries like Canada, the US. Russia was still not at that level because you can see that they are still there in the 60s. They have not yet crossed the mark 70. That was the same case with Kenya. So you can see the government of Kenya has really been very tough on its citizens when it comes to this lockdown thing. Because you can see by the end of the March, we already be keeping company with the countries that have the most stringent measures. Like we have South Africa, we have Kenya, we have Nigeria, we have Ivory Coast. Going into April, you can see that Uganda, the way I said earlier, Uganda started very strongly. In April, they had like a 93% score. Like the government was really tight on the coronavirus pandemic. And Kenya was a little bit waiting for things to happen so that we can react because I think the government of Kenya kind of follows on other governments. We can actually compare with what is the United Kingdom. You can actually see that when we look at the Kenyan map and the United Kingdom, it's like we are moving at the same pace because we copy our policy models for reasons we don't know. So you can see at this point by almost 10th of April, Uganda was still very stringent. Also, you need to notice that Argentina has been very stringent, like it scores 100% on that. And Brazil, of course, we know the issue, the case for Brazil is a little bit mixed. We know that they have a very funny president who doesn't care about the health of the people. So we cannot be 100% sure what we are going to say about Brazil. But then we can also look at Australia, was also very reactive. They wanted to open. Actually, the the football league was supposed to continue by mid-April. They were talking about just playing without fans, blah blah blah. Because Australia has really been very reluctant, very reactive when it comes to handling the issue of coronavirus. And then we move to May. You can remember that in Kenya we were expecting a surge in numbers of the people with the the virus in May. So you can actually see that the government was kind of getting prepared for that because they were using a model I don't understand. I don't know where they got it from. So you can see in May we really became very stringent. Like you can see the the government was kind of doing everything it can to control the flow, the spread of the virus. I think it's at this point where Uganda kind of said, no, we are not going to work the way Kenya is working, so they were left behind. They did not keep on enforcing stringent measures. And I think it's something that's interesting for African countries because you have to look at the whole thing from different perspectives. You have to look at the secondary effects of the coronavirus. Like in my next video, I'm going to show you how the accidents in Kenya have increased in the last 3 months compared to the previous year using data from NTSA. But you can see that there has been a cost of coronavirus in the country where we we have been having people die because of excessive police force. The way we saw in the guy mwenye alikuwa ametuambwa, you can actually see a pattern where the government of Kenya has been introducing measures that have been counter effective. Instead of reducing the infection, of course, yeah, we can say that maybe we have controlled the infections of coronavirus, but then you can see that we have had an issue where these situations they have led to other problems like people are still going to the countryside despite the restrictions. People are dying from road accidents because of speeding to beat the 7 p.m. curfew. And I think that's one of the things that's going to guide the reaction of the government in the next few days because they might think that we are killing more people than corona. So I think we need to relax a little bit and rethink. And you can see Kenya has been consistently stringent, even as other countries are becoming relaxed. Like you can see the case of Niger, the case of. But we are going to ignore Tanzania for now. We are going. Zambia has a bit stringent. You can see Sweden. Yeah, the sort of Sweden is also interesting. You can actually see Kenya has been very consistent the way we have been treating this disease. Maybe you can say that the minister has really been treating it abnormally, hoping that it doesn't treat us normally. But I'm actually interested to see what is going to happen next because we have really done what we should have done by the book. The effectiveness of the policies that the government has implemented is unquestioned. We cannot really talk about that right now because the government, there are so many parameters. Like the government can say that people are not moving to the countryside, but then Kenyans are Kenyans, so they are going to take the licenses, they are going to bribe the police officers. And that could actually explain why, despite the fact that the government has been really, really tough on this disease, we still experience, like the way I showed earlier, we have still experienced a very high number of cases, and that really puts the government policy into question on whether it is reactive, it is based on evidence, or whether they are just doing what other countries are doing. I don't know what's going to happen with the virus in the next few months, but for now, we can actually be happy that Kenya has a very good reporting structure that shows the cases every day. And you can see that's why our data is up to date. So we I think that's the face of corona when you look at it from a global perspective.